everybody, this is Matt from rhinoio.com, and today we've got our contact form element that we've created. We've successfully rendered it to our index.html file. You can see here we've got two inputs, our message text area and our send button. So now what we want to do is hook it up with Ajax so that we can send the user's information to our email. The Polymer team has created several quote-unquote core web components that allow us to do things in HTML markup that weren't previously possible. One of those things is being able to make an Ajax request just by using a custom element that they've created called core-ajax. So in order to be able to use core-ajax, we need to get the web component files needed. So let's go to our web browser. And I'm going to put this link in the description, but it's the GitHub address for the core-ajax web component. Let's just download the files, open them up, and inside of our components folder in our main directory, let's create a new folder. We're going to call it core-ajax. And inside of this folder, I'm going to take these files and place them there. And now we have the files that are needed to allow us to use the core-ajax element. So in order to use core-ajax, we need to go back to our contact-form.html file. And just like we did with this polymer.html file, we need to add a link element. Set the relationship equal to import and set the reference equal to core-ajax / core-ajax.html. And now we can use the core-ajax element inside of our template here, just like we would any other custom element. So before we use the core-ajax element, I want to take a look at the attributes that you can use with it. The first is the URL attribute, which sets the target URL for the request. The second is handle as, which tells what type of data is stored in the response property. This can be text, XML, JSON, array buffer, blob, or document. Next is auto. If this attribute is inside core-ajax, whenever the element is rendered in our index.html file or wherever else we put it, it will automatically run that request when it loads. But if it's not in the attributes, we can also run the Ajax request by using a go method that we will look at later on. Next is the parameters, which will be a JSON string, and it's sent to the URL. And then we have response, which returns the response object, and we can display that data back onto the index file or whatever file we use it with. Next is the method, which can be get, post, put, or delete. The default is get. And then we have headers, which is the HTTP request headers to send. Body, which is an optional raw body content to send. And with credentials, which sets the with credentials flag on the request. Now that we've looked at that, let's go ahead and go back to our contact-form.html. And inside of the template, let's go ahead and call the core-ajax element. And let's go ahead and set some attributes. Our first one is going to be ID equals Ajax submit. It's not required that you have an ID, but we're going to use this later. Let's set the URL equal to process.php, and the method we'll set to post. Now let's add 3 parameters, and we want to make sure that when we set the parameters we use single quotes first, and then we do a JSON object. The first parameter we're going to call name, and I'm just going to set it to something bogus for now. The next parameter will be email, and I'll just set it to something for now. And then the next will be message. And again, we'll just set it to hello world. Now let's set the response equal to curly braces response. Now some of you may be wondering why we use the curly braces. And if you'll remember from our last video, we talked about how the Polymer constructor, if you have it inside of the Polymer-element, it will give certain powers to the template, much like data binding like AngularJS, and also event mapping. So the scope for data binding is only within our custom element. To show you an example of this, let's go ahead and set the value of our inputs in our text area equal to data binding. So let's give it a name of name. We'll give this one a name of email. And give this one a name for message. Let's go underneath our button here and call up name, email, and then under that we'll just add message. So now let's save our file. Let's go to our web browser and refresh. And now if we give a name called Harry, an email of hello Harry at harry.com, and a message of hello world, you can see that it's got the two-way data binding that is similar to Angular.js. So let's go back and get rid of our things there. Let's go ahead and change these values because we want these values to equal the values that are sent in our AJAX parameters. So I'm going to set the name equal to name. I'm going to set the email equal to email, and we will set the message equal to message. Now when our form is submitted, whatever the value is of the input here in name, it will be the same value that's given to that AJAX request and sent to our process.php file. Now we need to have our button actually submit the request. So to do that, we're going to need to use on-click with our button to set the event, and we're going to use two-way data binding to set it to button click, and this is going to trigger a function that is inside of our Polymer constructor. So we need to add that function now. Let's go to our Polymer constructor and let's add that second argument, which is for the prototyping, and here we'll type in button click function. Now whenever button click is true, which is the case when we click this button, it will run this function. So inside of the function, let's add this $.ajax submit .go, and this $$ will call any ID within the scope of the Polymer-element. So we're going to be calling the ID of AJAX submit, which is the same ID for our core-element, and we're going to be telling it to go using the go method, which is going to send the request in the AJAX. Now let's use a comma, and we're going to add another function here. We're going to call it response changed, and add the function old value. Now what this does is whenever response is changed, so here's response, whenever it is changed, it's going to run this function. And let's just do console.log this.response. So whenever response is changed, it's going to console log the response value here so that we can see it. Now before we go any further, I want to make a correction here inside the URL. This is referring to the component/contact-form folder. We need it to do the root directory instead, so let's add 2 backspaces and save it. And that's going to be it for our refactored component here. So now let's go to process.php. Inside of our root directory here, which is contact form, we're going to add a process.php file. And all I've done here is take the post name, post email, and post message, made them variables, and I'm echoing them so that whenever we send our form, it will echo back the name, email, and message that we sent inside of the console log. So let's go to our contact form page and let's hit refresh. Now let's add a name, an email, and a message. Click send and look in our console log. You can see that the name, email, message was sent. So this is great and this is wonderful. If we were to add the mail function here, we could send it to our email address whenever someone submits their information. But let's make our web component just a little bit more powerful. Let's go back to our Polymer-element, and we're going to add a attributes attribute, and let's put URL. And what this is going to allow us to do is use a URL attribute inside of our custom element. So inside contact-form we can put URL. Let's set it equal to process.php. Save that. Now we can use two-way data binding with this URL, and we can go down here to our core-ajax URL and put curly braces URL, and that will data bind whatever this attribute is inside this attribute. So this kind of allows developers to set their own custom elements inside of the template, their own values for whatever they want to data bind to. So let's go back inside of our contact form. We'll hit refresh. Once again, send some text. We'll click send. Look at the console log and you can see that it sent our message. So that is how we use Ajax inside of Polymer web components. Thank you guys so much for watching, and don't forget to leave a comment. Let us know if you like the web component and Polymer series. We may continue to do some more videos, and then also like and share, and we will see you guys next time.